All right, folks, let's get this show on the road. So welcome to this AMI Connect event session on AMI Original Podcasts. My name is Andy Frank. I'm the manager of AMI Audio based here in Toronto. I'm actually in my office, which is nice because I don't spend a lot of time in this office. I've been at AMI for the last 6 years, and prior to that, I was part of VoicePrint, which was AMI's original incarnation back in the day. I was there for 3 years and did a bunch of radio, and I had my own video company for 6 years. And prior to that, I was dishing food for in the hospitality business for 22 years. So I've had some different perspectives in my life, and I think you'll be hearing a lot of different perspectives on this panel very shortly too. So I'm really excited to be moderating this panel. I'm really proud of this panel. I have to tell you, I didn't expect to feel this way right at this moment, but I feel an enormous pride over this panel, this little podcast thing that we invented about a year ago at this time, and where it's gone. Of course, Lawrence, you've been around a little longer than a year, but still. Anyway, before we begin, I have some housekeeping for everyone and encourage you to visit the info booth if you need any more information about AMI. So all of today's sessions feature live closed captioning, and to access live closed captioning, please click on the closed caption at the bottom of the Zoom window, and you can select show subtitle to turn them on and then hide subtitle to turn them off. And you can adjust the size and how the subtitles are shown in the subtitle settings. If you are a screen reader user, please do not enable closed captioning, all right? Depending on what you're most comfortable using, you can ask attendees, you can ask questions by raising your hand in the little raise your hand thing, or you can enter them into the chat. And use either way is fine. So we'll try to take as many questions from attendees as possible with our podcast hosts. If you are encountering any technical issues, you can visit the info booth and a member of the VFairs team will assist you. And you can visit the lounge to find links to our social media accounts and email address if you'd like to reach out. There will be a prize. There's a prize, guys. Randomly awarded to an attendee today. I don't think it's beer, but maybe that would be nice. Just by attending this session, you'll have been entered into the draw. Winners will be contacted via email after the event. So that's the housekeeping business. I hope everybody's clear. Allow me to introduce my panel of podcasters who are based in 4 thriving Canadian metropolises from coast to coast, going left to right. And we're going to start with Amy and Manti. I'm going to ask each of you to give me a 30-second elevator pitch about your podcast. All right. So you're meeting someone in an elevator. It's pre-COVID times. And you're going to talk about your podcast. Amy, let's hear about Accessing Art with Amy, which drops twice a month, beginning every second Tuesday at your favorite podcasting platform. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Andy. It's actually every second Thursday.
Like I said, it's every second Thursday. I even wrote that correctly.
I know. T's and T's, right? Thanks for the opportunity, friends. It's Amy speaking, and Accessing Art with Amy really at its core is the intersection of art and disability. So I spend a lot of time speaking to artists that identify with disability, what kind of art they do, how they do it, and why they do it, which is also a really interesting question to ask artists, is the why of your artistry. And we look at a whole bunch of different varieties of art forms. So it's been a real joyride thus far.
It certainly has. And now joining us as we head slowly east, we go over the mountains and we land in one of the most beautiful places to spend the summer, Saskatchewan, and to Regina, where Becky Czar is there to tell us about the blind reality. What's your elevator pitch, Becky?
Hi, everybody. This is Becky talking. My podcast, The Blind Reality, basically, it's a depiction of my lived vision loss journey, which sounds really selfish, but honestly, it is a raw, honest look at my lived experiences. And there's not a lot of editing that's done to it. And when I say that, I mean filter. What I felt is what you hear on that podcast. And the reason why I'm doing it is because I really want somebody out there who's doing, kind of going along their vision loss journey to feel like they are supported. And for many years, I sat quiet and idle, and I didn't share these stories. Unless you were within my very close inner circle, you wouldn't have heard them. So I finally feel like I am in a position in my life where I'm able to share and help. And hopefully, if you listen, you can relate and or learn to, what my life is like. So.
Blind Reality drops every second Tuesday of the month.
Yep, Tuesday.
Yay!
Got
I
her.
got that one right. All right. All right. From Ottawa, Ontario, a man who's never met a body of water he didn't think was a glorious oasis. And that includes several puddles on Rideau Street.
The canoe for canoeing.
For canoeing, of course. A longtime AMI audio contributor. You might have heard Bluefish Radio back in the day. Lawrence Gunther. He is behind Outdoors with Lawrence Gunther. Lawrence, tell us about your fine work.
I'll describe myself first for those of you who can't see me. I have salt and pepper beard and hair, short, and I'm about 6'3". I weigh about 220 pounds. I'm descendants of settlers that came to Canada in the 1950s. And I live in Ottawa now on unceded territory, Algonquin territory. Why I did Outdoors with Lawrence Gunther is because I grew up in a small town and I really couldn't play a lot of sports, being visually impaired, legally blind. And I really got into other types of sports through scouts, believe it or not. So I got into canoeing, canoe racing, and canoe camping at age 12. And then at age 13, my venture company, First Georgetown Ventures, we took two 25-foot canoes and we left Toronto. We paddled down Lake Ontario. We paddled down the St. Lawrence River to the Gaspé Peninsula. We portaged through the Mattapeti Valley there and out onto the coast of New Brunswick, and then down the coast of New Brunswick, and then across to Prince Edward Island, and then around to the other side of the island to get there in time for the World Scout Jamboree. And I just loved being, in a canoe and just going somewhere in a canoe. And I've always loved this. And I think, as a person with a visual disability, there's so much we can do in the outdoors. We get attracted to living urban life because that's where all the accommodations are focused. But you know what? You can take this stuff and you can apply it in outdoor ways no one's imagined.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Lawrence. And last but certainly not least, from the beautiful East Coast city of Halifax, Nova Scotia, the host of Low Vision Moments, whose latest episode dropped today, and has another one coming up this month too. That's pretty exciting. And Jenny Bovard, tell us about this particular magnificent work.
Well, hi everyone. Low Vision Moments is a podcast all about telling stories, having a laugh, and what I really hope is that listeners who do have a personal connection to low vision or blindness or albinism, whatever preferred terminology you like to use, I hope that you can relate. And my other hope is that maybe people who are listening who do not have any personal connection to vision loss or blindness or albinism, maybe they'll get a little bit of insight, maybe raise a little bit of awareness while I'm at this fun thing that I get to do with the podcast. But above all, this podcast is about having a good time. It's about laughing at ourselves. And really low vision moments are those things that just happen. And I say this at the beginning of every episode, but they're those things that happen in everyday life when we are just trying to go about our day. You're just trying to go to work, do the things that you like to do, and you can be doing everything right. And then bam, a low vision moment happens. It might be frustrating at the time. It might be embarrassing at the time. Sometimes it's funny in the moment, but oftentimes it's not. So later on, I get to have a guest on once a month and we get to dish on these and we pick a theme and we just run with it and have a really good time.
Wait till you hear the last episode, folks. All right. I'm going to get to some questions in a second. Our original podcasts were conceived about a year ago, as I was commissioned here at AMI with the task of uncovering some of our not so hidden talents to create these products and expand our offerings at AMI, over and above all the other things we do at AMI Audio, the reading service, the live shows, and other programs. Our mission at AMI, of course, is to create programming that's informative, entertaining, and empowering to our audience. And it is my belief that each one of these podcasts delivers on all three of those counts, but in different measures and in very different ways. And the podcasts are available at all your regular places you can download podcasts, such as Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, and of course, they're free. The other standard is that their duration is no more than 30 minutes. So it's an easy thing to do while you're commuting, taking a walk, or in my favorite way, and I'm sure this is done by a few people in this room, when cooking. I love listening to a podcast when I'm cooking. I just get into that's my favorite way of consuming podcasts. So I'm going to, there's a couple of things here in my chat. So let's see if we got any questions. Don't think so. Elena, can you see my chat? Am I reading this correctly?
Yeah, actually, we have one person who has their hand up. That's Douglas. Douglas, I'm going to ask you to unmute, and you can go ahead and ask your question. Hi, Douglas.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure I hit the right buttons on my phone. I'm a low vision person myself. But I was wondering, when you, this is a general question to everyone in the room. When you record your podcast, what software do you prefer or is most accessible? And my other question was, is when you started podcasting, did any of you feel nervous? Because recording something in general is fine, but when you know it's going to be put out there, I know from experience, since I've studied broadcasting, radio, and television, it's a little more nerve-wracking when you first start.
I'm going to, if you don't mind, folks, I'm going to answer the first part because I think this is something that's really been helpful for us, Douglas, which has been something called Zencaster. So Zen, as in Buddhist Zen, Zencaster, but it's one of those modern things that doesn't have an E at the end of it. So it's Zencaster minus the E. And it's an American outfit that allows, it's a paid thing, but it's not expensive. And you can do interviews and so on, almost as though you were in a studio. It's been really super easy for us to manage and handle. Most of our podcasters are using Zencaster and working with one of our audio technicians using that platform. But I want to ask Lawrence, because Lawrence, you've been doing podcasting for a very long time. What type of software have you used, and are you using, and what have you used in the past?
I use MP3 Direct Cut. It's free, and it has many of the same keyboard commands as your Facebook or as your JAWS. You know, Control V for paste and all those keys. So you can cut and paste, you can move tracks around. You will destroy your audio track at some point if you mess around with it too much, but it's really good for editing, and it's free, and it's super simple, and you can be pretty precise. I use Switch Sound File Converter. I paid $20 for that. I have an old slide sort of, you know, the kind of mixer board, but you know what? I just listened to a great podcast by David Woodbridge in Australia, and he describes how to use the new P4 Zoom pod track recorder / mixing board. And I got one of those things, and it's really simple. It's maybe $300, but you can make your own podcasts on that. And I got it and I think, man, it's not really that accessible, but listening to David Woodbridge, it is accessible. You can do it.
I need some help to remind me the second part of Douglas's question. One of you definitely remembers it. Jenny? Do you remember the second part of Douglas's question?
I remember it? Way to put me on the spot. What was the second part? I don't. I don't remember the second part.
Becky, thank you.
I do. It's whether or not we get nervous when we're ready to release our next episode. And so I can follow up that answer. And absolutely, I get like nerve-wracking, shaking almost, especially at the very beginning when the episodes were being released. And I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Because it's really personal information that I'm sharing on my podcast. And I'm not really sure how people are going to react. And I sort of just hold my breath to a degree and wait for people to react or not. But it's getting a little bit better. And I do have a sounding board of my husband. Before I share anything with a technical producer, I always make my husband listen to it and be like, have I crossed the line? Have I not? Is that fine? That type of thing. But absolutely, I know my nerves get the best of me for sure, but I am working on it.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
And this is Amy speaking. Oh, sorry, Jenny.
Sorry to cut you off, Amy. Now that I remember the question, I do have an answer. I will say, when I first got into this, I was really quite nervous. I was really unsure if other people were going to find these low vision moment stories of mine funny. I knew that my friends and family played along and laughed and said they found them funny, but we're real everyday people out there listening. Were they going to find it funny? And I'm relieved to say that the feedback has been mostly positive all around, and people are enjoying and laughing and having a good time. I will say, even doing this kind of stuff, I love going outside of my comfort zone. You'd think after doing this for a time, podcasting, contributing to AMI in other ways, you get more comfortable, which you do, but I still get what I call like the nervous sweats, and they just happen, but you just keep going. I think I enjoy the rush of going outside my comfort zone, but then you realize, oh, wow, I'm a little flustered, but you just keep going.
When you stop having those, that you should worry. When you get too comfortable, I still get butterflies every time I'm live on the air. Still,
I think it's healthy.
Not throughout the whole time, but like that 1 minute before. I still do. I've been doing this for many years now. Amy.
Thanks. I guess like my perspective is a little bit of the opposite, because I'm a trained actor and voiceover artist. And so I don't get the nerves in the same way, but what I do is I try and channel them into my artistry. So as an actor's tip that I used to, as an actor, try to add filler words to a line so that it sounded more like it was my voice. And my acting coach would always say, just put that into the line, right? So take that embodiment of the way you're feeling about that line and put it into the line. Don't say it, but put the emotion into the line. And so I take that into my podcasting, but I also look at my podcasting as a pull up a chair to my kitchen table and let's have a chat. So that also takes a little bit of the pressure off, because I'm able to engage with my guest and follow the conversation. Instead of being worried about, did I ask this question? Did I ask this question? Did I ask this question? Because I find that disengages me from the process. And so the more I'm engaged, the less nervous I feel.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I got it. James has got his hands up, and then we'll go to the chat window after that. James.
Hi, I'm unmuted, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this question's for Lawrence. Lawrence, when I could see, I was very much engaged in outdoor sports, cycling, downhill skiing, interior canoeing and camping and that sort of thing. And I just want to know, how do you connect with organizations that would enable me to continue doing those things?
There's a ton of resources out there. I think every major city across Canada has a downhill ski club or a cross-country ski club. They have tandem bike clubs. They have dragon boat clubs. There's lots of blind dragon boat teams out there. And then, just the sort of groups that go out hiking together. And I joined hiking groups, and you just go hiking with people, you make friends, and you know how to hike, and you're mobile. So it's not a big adjustment. You just have to teach people how to do inline, hiking when it gets narrow and they hold the end of your pole or whatever. So there's tons of options out there. Facebook has really made that totally accessible to find these resources now, much more so than it used to be. You just have to be brave and take that chance and, join these groups and just say, hey, I'm blind, but, I really like hiking, or I really like canoeing. I've done it a lot and I'd like to do it again. Can I come along and, for a day or so and try it out with you guys? You'll be surprised.
Here's a question. I'm going to start with Jenny. Okay. Has anyone, this is from Tracy, to all panelists, but let's start with you. Has anyone ever torn a strip off of you for anything you've said?
I would welcome it, but I love a good debate. But luckily, no. I've really only had positive feedback, and it's really interesting. I get feedback I had one email from a mom who says she listens to the show with her kid who has a visual impairment. And I think he was maybe 9 years old, she mentioned. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, I use some colorful language. We hold nothing back, and that's part of, I think, what makes it a relatable show, a comfortable experience for the guest as well, as we just have a conversation. And I let some words drop that I wouldn't say normally in a professional environment, but that's how I speak when I speak to my friends. And I don't know if there is a boundary, if there is a rule, I tend to be the kind of person to push a little bit and see how far I can go. And if I have to ask for forgiveness later, I will. So I hope that answers the question. But no, nothing negative. But I would welcome any criticism or feedback. I'm always open.
Becky, anybody ever torn a strip off of you?
No, I think it would be kind of exciting too. I mean, it sounds terrible, but I did notice, I have to admit, on Apple Podcast reviews, I do have 1, 2. So it kind of made me giggle. Of course, I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? And then just write me a comment, tell me what the issue was. But it was a 2. And so then I kind of giggled and I was like, well, whatever. Everybody's welcome to their opinion. And no, I haven't heard anything like that. So, I mean, I'm sure I'm opening the gates right now and I'm going to get a bunch of emails saying, you know what, you kind of sucked with this episode or when you said this. But same thing as Jenny. I don't filter things. On the episode coming up, is it I think it's an episode 10. I'm just working on it right now. And I do say something somewhat controversial. And I'm just like, you know what? The thing is that the podcast is about my authentic truth. And if I start filtering out, it's not going to be authentic. It's just going to be this fluffy podcast that's out there and not genuine to myself. So I do invite any kind of comments, good, bad, or nasty.
Amy, Lawrence, if you don't mind, I think I'm going to go to the next question, unless you have something. No? Okay.
Oh, I'd say one thing.
Yeah.
Don't swear on your podcast, because Apple scans your podcast for bad language, and then you get an X-rated ranking on it. So.
We have the big E beside a couple of our podcasts. It's all good.
I think that gives me clout. I like that.
it's real life. There is, it's there. The warning is there. All right. I'm going to take the next one here. This is from Andrea. Are the podcasts a volunteer effort, or can one make money from them? So let's go to Lawrence for that one.
I've met a lot of podcasters. The average podcaster does 7 podcasts before they quit. And so there's a lot of people who don't follow through with it. To turn it into a money-making operation, that can take 3 or 4 years, and if it ever happens. So yeah, we haven't really figured out how to do that. Unless you're sort of coming from a great big organization and they're paying you to do it, it's just a start up and make money with sponsors. They'll give you a free baubles, to mention on air and a tryout, but to cut contracts and get checks and things like that, not so easy. But once you get up to 1,000 listeners and 100,000 downloads, you can start to go after sponsors, but you need to get there 1,000 downloads per episode, consistently, and then you can start to ask for some money for product placement.
And just so our AMI original podcasts are paid. We do pay our podcasters.
Thank you.
So probably too much in your case, Lawrence, but we pay you anyway. All right.
I want to raise.
I'm going to go to Christy. Christy has a question. Christy, you just have to unmute your mic. Or can I do that?
Hi, my name's Christy. Thanks for having me. Can you tell me if there's any visually impaired roller skate clubs?
Lawrence, have you heard of that?
There's a blind skateboarder in California who's doing a lot of this, and they're actually working out some technology on this front. And I believe there's another blind skateboarder in Canada, but I don't know about blind inline skaters or rollerbladers. So I'm not sure, but it's not hard to do. I think the main thing you want to do if you want to roller skate is just avoid the hills, right? And skate with someone. I roller skate. I don't inline skate, but I roller skate with the 4 wheels, 2x2. And on flat surfaces, I find it's just as easy as ice skating. There's no difference. It's tricky stopping, but as long as you're on a flat surface, you just drag that one toe and you'll stop eventually.
Thank you. Just a note here from Sylvia to James. James, you can check out the Black Hills Ski for Light BHSFL, or for downhill skiing, and blindsailing.ca for any sailing opportunities in the Toronto area. So that's from Sylvia. Thank you very much. Douglas has a question. Just have to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I was hitting the wrong button there. I was having a visually impaired moment. Two quick questions. One's for Amy. What you said you've done voice work in what, just out of like movies or animation or?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. I've done a little bit of voice work, some commercial work, some, I won't say they're big blockbuster films, but so Canadian content type of voice work. I studied acting and voice from the time I was a teenager, and so a lot of the work that I've done has been a while now. But for example, you'll find clips of my voice in a movie called The Snow Walker, which is a movie that I worked on for years. Canadian made movie. Anyways, I'm peppered sort of in and about in lots of movies, but breaking into voiceover is a very particular skill. So I would challenge people to find resources and training, because there's different techniques for, making your voice sound really far away or really close to the mic. The microphone's a very intimate place to speak.
Where did you study it?
I studied at the Vancouver Film School. So I'm based in Vancouver, but you can study like just about any university will offer that as part of a acting program. So you could easily look into that. And then once you're ready to maybe test the waters, there is a subscription service called Backstage. It's a paid service, but what they do is they send you audition notices. And so you can record a soundbite from home. This is acting auditions, but also voiceover, and all sorts of different folks looking for different types of actors. So sometimes it's a voiceover for like a presentation, right? So somebody's doing some sort of like corporate presentation and they need voiceover in the background to introduce the presentation. So there's all sorts of ways of being able to participate in the voiceover world.
Well, that's very interesting. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Amy.
And my other question is for everyone out here. When you get criticism, I've noticed it on like online, different radio stations. People will automatically, if something's put out there, point the finger at the media. And I've studied broadcasting, radio and television, and I've done online radio at the college I attended. And do you ever feel like saying, if you're not in my shoes, don't be so quick to criticize? Because some people can be really nasty. And the thing what they don't realize is, especially reporting the news, you have no choice. This is your job to report. I know it's different with podcasting, but.
Why don't you take that, Jenny? You have to unmute yourself.
I think with most of us, we make it quite clear that we're sharing a personal experience, a certain perspective. No two people's experiences are the same. Even myself, I live with albinism. I know tons of people with albinism, and we all have different perspectives, lived experiences, and ways of looking at things. I don't know. I think that you make a really good point about, hey, if you're not in my shoes, why don't you come and give it a try? It's like if you're, same as athletes, we like to judge athletes' performances, and it's like, okay, well, I'd like to see you pick up a stick and do half as well. And I think that's what it all goes back to, is you just take a look at yourself. And this kind of ties into my most recent podcast episode, like maybe just think about what you say before you say it. Maybe we'll process it a little bit, and maybe you'll find the answer on your own without ruining someone else's day.
And that's that never happens with the Toronto Maple Leafs as a subject. I can tell you that. But thank you very much, Douglas. Becky, I just wanted to ask you quickly. I was just surfing the web a few minutes ago, and I saw that you have a new family member in your life now. Tell us about Lulu.
Her name is Lulu. She is my brand new guide dog, my very first guide dog. Spoiler alert. She is a golden retriever black lab cross, and she's sitting right beside me, and I'm surprised she hasn't sort of video photobombed us, but she's been an amazing addition into my life. And if I wasn't such a stubborn, slow learner, I probably would have had her a few years earlier. So it's been a wild ride for the last 2 months. Part of me thinks like, holy moly, it's only been 2 months, but part of me is like, holy, it's been 2 months. You know what I mean? So I look forward to having her on my side and exploring the rest of our community and making up for some lost time, because most definitely I kind of went into hiding a bit with my stick. My son, I called my cane my stick. So that's what we always call it around here. But because of my vision loss dropped quite substantially in the last year and a half or so. And I just felt like it wasn't doing enough for me. And it reaffirmed that I need to apply for a guide dog when I walked face first into a giant cement hole. So I am delighted to have Lulu. Yes, thanks so much, Andy.
Well, we look forward to your first interview with Lulu, because you do interview all of your family members at one time or another. So
yes. And hopefully she's kinder to me than my son was, right?
Your son was awesome. One of the things that Becky does at the end of every one of her podcasts, The Blind Realities, she'll interview one of her family members or friends to ask their perspective to reflect. Becky, correct me if I'm wrong, but to reflect on the perspective of the story you just told, right?
Yeah, for the most part.
From their point of view.
Yeah, I think there's lots that we can learn from people who are not directly doing the journey themselves, but traveling alongside us, because I recognize that I'm the one that's actually experienced a vision loss, but I have this whole crew that's traveled this last almost 8 years with me. And I think it's really important to share some of their insights and learnings, because there are other family members out there who are experiencing it as well. And some of them are a little bit more kind when it comes to the questions and filter it, I guess, maybe consider my feelings. But I brought out my 11-year-old son, and there was no filter at all. He was very honest, and it made me giggle, because I was just like, oh, you got way too comfortable too fast. So I'm afraid there might be something media related in his future.
I'm sure it's only going to get worse if it's 11.
Right. Thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem. I'm here all week. Jenny, I want to know about, we've talked a bit about language and other such things. And, I want to know where, how you straddle that line, because you do it really well. You straddle that line of being candid and funny, but boy, you go into some places that might not be normally gone into in the podcast. So where do you find that line?
It's difficult for me to put my finger on the line or put my foot on the line, or however you want to say it. Is there a line is really my question. And I say that because I really want Low Vision Moments, the podcast, to be, I just want it to be as natural and conversational and real as possible. So my rule for myself is like, I don't just curse and swear for the sake of cursing and swearing. I'll drop an F-bomb or drop whatever colorful language if it would naturally fit into the conversation that I'm having. When I sit down with my guest, and I mean virtually, of course, when we sit down virtually, I kind of try to forget that we're doing a podcast, and I just try to have, I just want to have an exchange. I just want to have a conversation. And so that's how I look at it, as opposed to if I go on now with Dave Brown and I'm doing a food segment, I've got things planned out a little bit more, and I know what I'm going to say instead of the colorful language. So I try to just keep it conversational. And when it comes to subjects, I don't think anything is off limits. I legitimately think I would I would talk about anything. And then, Andy, if you think it's inappropriate, then I'll have to ask for forgiveness later on. But so far, so good.
Yeah,
It's a good question.
I love it. I mean, all of you share this in common. You're all audacious in your own way, like in what is an organic way for you. And it's one of the things that I love. And I think you have to be, especially if you're going to do something that is so first person, such as some of these podcasts are. Amy, I want to know from you, if you had to, and I remember, does anybody remember business cards? And we all had to walk around with business cards. And if you had to create a business card, Amy Amanti, and then put your profession or title underneath that business card, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a hard one, Andy, because anybody who knows me knows that I have, it's my metaphor is that I have my finger in lots of pies, but they all taste good, right? So it's a little strawberry, a little vanilla, a little creme de mint, whatever. And they all, there you go, Jenny, there's a food segment for you. But they all taste really good. And for me, what I love is being able to switch my focus constantly, because if I start to feel bored or stagnant, then I have another thing to switch to. And I love that. So I don't know what I would put on a business card now, but I can tell you early in my air quotes, I don't even know if we can call it a career, but early in my life as a person with sight loss, I created a business card because people kept saying to me, well, what is it you do? And instead of giving them this laundry list, I handed them a card that says, I make lemonade. That's it. That's all it said. No name, no phone number. I make lemonade. And some people are like, oh, really? What's your favorite flavor? And some people got it, that I just take lemons and I turn them into stuff. And it doesn't matter what the situation is. So I do so many different things. It's really hard to nail it down. So, but typically I refer to myself as an artist and a creator. And I hope that most things fall under that category.
I can tell everybody listening one thing that I really loved from this unfortunate pandemic that we're all living through, which was there was a promo for your podcast that was sent out a long time ago, and in that package were some beads, because you are a beader, correct?
Yes.
You do so that's one of the things you do, and this particular bead, this particular chain, was designed to support your mask.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been wearing that thing ever since. I love
Really?
it. Yeah, I wore it the whole time. People say, "Where'd you get that?" I'd say, "Well, this versatile character named Amy Amanti made this thing, because you made
blind beater." Yeah.
You made how many? You made for the mail
For
out.
AMI, I made 75 of them.
Yeah.
And they take about 2 hours to make.
Yeah, and it's finicky stuff.
It's finicky. The beads are smaller than the size of a grain of rice. And then they're on a string, and it's a lanyard you wear around. So some people used to wear them with their eyeglasses, but I made them for the mask.
Yeah.
So that you could just wear your mask around your neck if you had to take it off. And
because
I kept dropping mine. And then I was like, well, that's it. I don't want to wear it now. It's been on the floor. It's whatever. Right. And so I was able to wear it around my neck if I needed to, sneeze or have lunch or something. Right. So thank you, Andy. I appreciate that.
Lawrence, I want to ask you, when I listen, one of the things I love about outdoors, and this was a new a new element when we converted from Bluefish Radio to outdoors on AMI Audio, and then with the podcast, was the introduction of your daughter Lily, aka Miss Lily, who appears on every one of your podcasts. And tell us about what her role is, and tell us a little bit about her and a little bit about the role that she plays, because I think it's absolutely delightful. And I have to also say that what are we now? Maybe 15 episodes in or so.
26.
Like I said, 26. Like I said, 26. Yeah, I'm pretty good. Don't ask me to run the accounting department here.
Skip the first 5 anyway. Just skip the first 5. They were rusty. They were
But anyway, she's really. It's amazing how her confidence has evolved and how her personality is emerging. But tell us a bit about your daughter.
I roped her into this because I realized, I'm trying to target this podcast to young people, mainly like to youth living with vision impairments, blindness, to get them to try outdoor stuff, to mentor them a little bit. We all need to be mentored. I was mentored, getting someone who can challenge you, inspire you to take chances at a young age. You form these connections to nature that it's much harder to do later in life. And my daughter always likes to give me a hard time, but I've mentored her as all my children to have outdoor connections. So I said, can you do this with me and help us reach this demographic? Because I can't do it on mine. I'm just an old guy. And she reminds me of that all the time. So I said, just take me on. Just take me on. So she does. She challenges me. She brings in facts. She challenges me. She doesn't let me get away with stuff. And I think a lot of people just love that little exchange we have at the beginning of every podcast where we talk about, she brings some information and that's irrelevant to the story. And each podcast follows a storyline. And then we bring in some guests and some tips and so on, but bucket lists. But yeah, a lot of people love her. But you know what? She turned 15 and she still has not listened. She swears she has never listened to any of the podcasts.
I don't believe her. I don't believe her.
I don't believe her
I
either.
don't believe her. Guys, I have 1 minute left. I'm afraid, as usual, time flies by when we do these kinds of things. Betty Noble, first of all, hello, Betty. It's nice to see your name there.
Yeah.
This is a question for Lawrence. So, Lawrence, you're going to have to answer this question in about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Betty said, I listened to the video about getting Lewis as your guide dog. Did he work out?
Yes, he's 2 years now, my guide dog. Makings of a Guide Dog. We did a 10-part series. You can get the described full-length edition of those 10 videos in one big dump on AMI. They're available on the AMI on demand. So check it out. It was a lot of fun. We filmed it over 10 months in 2019, and me working with all these different guide dogs in training, taking them on outdoor experiences. My goal was to be able to pick my own guide dog at the end, but you know what? It's like Survivor. I got the last one standing. No. No,
all right, we have to wrap up. I'm going to quickly remind everybody who's on here who these people are. Amy Amanti is the host of Accessing Art with Amy, joined us from Vancouver. Lawrence Gunther is the host of Outdoors with Lawrence Gunther. Becky Czar of Regina, Saskatchewan. Lawrence from Ottawa. Becky Czar of Regina, Saskatchewan with The Blind Reality. And Jenny Bovard of Halifax, Nova Scotia with Low Vision Moments. Thank you all very, very, very much for taking the time today to do this. You guys are fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Love all your podcasts.
Best party I've been to in over a year, guys. Thank you.
And there was no beer.
And no beer. That's telling.
You know.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we have to exit. Thank you very much for being here.
Cheers.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Be well, everyone.